All right, in this video, we're going to discuss 5 solutions to get a home sold in this market, and in fact, in any market. Now, where do these 5 issues come from? We're going to actually harken back to a video we just did called the 5 most common mistakes that homeowners make when they sell their homes. So let's go over those real quick and just recap. First of all, those 5 problems are choosing the wrong pricing strategy. And we're going to address that by talking about pricing strategy. Dismissing the importance of first impressions. We'll talk about marketing and how vital that is to getting a home sold. Number 3 is assuming that all real estate agents are the same. And so we're going to talk a lot about what an agent or a team, what the differences are between them and what they do for you, what you should look for in an agent or a team. Then we're going to talk about not understanding market indicators. Okay, that's a big one that sellers just don't understand. What are the market indicators? We address that as through education specifically. And then the 5th one is underestimating the process. And really, it just comes down to communication. So how well does your agent or your team communicate with you? All right, first, let's go over pricing strategies, okay? Well, we think there are about 3 pricing strategies in particular that are important to keep in mind and ones that you could employ during this market. So the first one would be an auction type of frenzy, right? So what's the point of having an auction? You try to set the bar low in terms of price to attract people in, right? The idea being that you would create a frenzy of people, a feeding frenzy, if you will. You want to get people bidding. People, there's a thing called FOMO, fear of missing out, right? People get excited about making an offer, and so that the price actually ends up getting bid up. Now, there are pitfalls to this approach. Naturally, if you don't get the exposure that you're looking for, if you don't have the interest that you're looking for, it can backfire on you. So maybe you set the price too low. The second one would be fair market value. Now, there's not a lot to say about that. Fair market value. What is this home really worth? We're going to set the price at the fair market value, and we're going to let the market then dictate to us, not dictate, but tell us kind of what the true price should be. When we see those offers come in, they should be in the ballpark of what the actual price is of the home. Now that could take us lower than list price. It could take us right at list price, and it could take us above that. It just depends on the interest level. But how well have we priced the home? That fair market value is the most direct approach. The third pricing strategy would be overpricing. Now, a lot of people say, hey, I'm just gonna get docked, I'm gonna get dinged, people are gonna make low offers. This market in particular in 2021 is not that market where we're seeing that happen a lot. But a lot of people will still happen to set their price too high, and that can backfire. If you set it too price, do you want to be the only one in this market that doesn't sell in a weekend or in 10 days? That is certainly a strategy to consider, but you want to make sure that you don't overprice it so much that you've stigmatized your home, okay? Now, a couple other things to keep in mind with pricing, and we could really go on and on about pricing, but pricing is one of the single best things you can do to market your home. Pricing your property appropriately, you work with an agent, you look at comps, right? Comps are comparable properties. Buyers are out there looking, they're savvy, they're looking at other properties, they compare them. If their budget is $800,000, they go in to look at a whole bunch of houses that are $800,000 or below, and they know how one house compares to the other, right? So the buyers aren't gonna be fooled by your price. Okay, so pricing strategy, not just the price, but the strategy involved. And then keep in mind that the time on the market really has to do with the price that you set, not the price that you'll get. All right, so the second issue that we see quite often is sellers will dismiss the importance of that first impression, okay? First impressions are huge in real estate. They say that you typically have about 10 days of exposure time to really intrigue the current buyer pool, right? So if you're on the market currently, you have those first 10 days that are super critical. After about 10 days, the market has kind of decided, at least the current pool of buyers have kind of decided what they think of your home. It's either under contract, and it has been for a week with 10 offers, or it's got a couple of offers, maybe right around list price, possibly you didn't get any offers, and that's also an indicator, right? But when it comes to really marketing your home, there's so many things to consider because we don't want to lose the momentum and the value of those first 10 days that we get when we first put a house on the market. So we need to think about things like sourcing your buyer. Where is your buyer going to come from? Who does the ideal buyer look like? And we're not talking about fair housing issues here. We're talking about, you've got a 6-bedroom, 5-bath home with a 3-car garage. That's going to fit a certain profile buyer, right? Now, if you've got a smaller home or a condo downtown, it's going to be a different profile buyer. So we need to source your buyer. We need to think about who is most likely to do that, and then we take that into consideration when we're marketing your home. Now, what about making improvements? I always say that there's 3 things you should consider when you're deciding whether or not to make improvements. And that is your budget, your time, and your willingness to tackle those projects. In a fast-moving market like ours right now, it may not make sense to do a lot to the home. You put it on the market, people will snatch it up, you might save yourself a lot of time and energy. Now, if you're really looking to maximize your value, you might consider, I've got plenty of money to put into some projects, I've got these things I wanted to get done, I want to get full value out of it. That's another consideration. And again, just overall willingness and wherewithal to be able to get these projects done. So it's not an absolute must that you should always take on projects. When it comes to your presentation, there's a couple things to consider, right? So how are you going to present this home to a buyer? How will you present your home to other agents? How will agents perceive the home? And then, how is this going to be seen online, right? So that online is literally someone in Dubai or Afghanistan or China could be looking at your home because it's online. You could have somebody in New York, you could have somebody in Philadelphia, you could have someone in Florida. How does your home appear to them online? What's the presentation look like? It's probably your biggest asset. Why not absolutely have it shine and speak, so that speak to the buyers, so that you can get the most for your money. Marketing is really all about driving interest to the property. Okay, so presentation is everything, but those are 3 things to consider when you're deciding how to present. How does your house present to buyers, agents, and online? Okay, so video marketing may be a big part of your overall presentation that you can consider. Video marketing can be phenomenal, but you want that video marketing to tell a different story than the photos do, right? So a walkthrough, we've all seen MTV Cribs, or we've seen a lot of HGTV. A video does more to kind of show the layout and that kind of thing, or how a home might live. Now the photos are going to really display each room as individual shots, and you get angles that kind of reveal certain things about a home. But a video should at least tell a different story than just photos do, okay? What about social media? You've got to have a social media presence. Everyone's on social these days, and so you want to make sure that you're well represented there. Staging, we have lots of videos and information. We have a staging guide, in fact. It's so important that we've gone into and made a staging guide, and we'd love to share that with you, by the way. If you have an interest in seeing what this looks like, please email us. The information's below, and we'll get you that staging guide, because we feel like staging is a huge part of how you present a home. Okay. Photography, again, we talked about that. Photography is really super important, that it's premier or sort of top-notch photography. You want your home to be well represented. And the photos, that should not be taken lightly. That's not a good place to cut corners when you're marketing a home. Okay. Open houses, not a lot of people, the statistics show that only about 2 to 3% of home buyers will actually find their home through an open house. But what it does do is add an additional exposure. And so depending on the market, open houses can be a phenomenal way to market a home. You want to consider how much print marketing you want to do, right? So does it matter to have print collateral? Does it matter to have a handout? Do you need to have something at the curb? We don't see a lot of that these days. A lot of times people think it's a waste of paper. But once you've got a buyer inside your home, you might want to have them take home a brochure so it can remind them of extra features, especially features that maybe are hard to represent just through the MLS listing. Okay. Ultimately, as I mentioned before, exposure is really what you're trying to gain from marketing. So exposure leads to offers, and the best offer for you ultimately. Now, networking is another thing that we'll do to market your home. We have other like-minded colleagues across the country, and we have agents that are in our brokerage. Our brokerage happens to be #1 with market share in the Denver metro area. It helps to market the home to local agents. We also want to, we also have a good list of agents that we want to network with and let them know about certain properties and listings, because they tend to work with more buyers. There's a lot of agents who do a lot of the work, right? And so they happen to have the most amount of buyers typically. We'll make sure that we shop it strategically to shop your home strategically to those agents. All right, the #3 solution to get a home sold in any market really comes down to the team or the agent that you're working with, right? So this addresses the issue that, the assumption I should say, that all realtors are the same, right? All agents are the same. Definitely not the case, and that is also the third most common mistake that home sellers will make when they're selling their home. So let's talk about the fact that there are 180 steps or so to get a home sold, right? So their impression is that maybe realtors don't do a lot to sell the home. Well, they should be, and if they aren't communicating that to you, that could be part of why you don't understand the value. But an agent will do about 180 different things during the home selling process, at least, to get a home sold. So it truly does matter who you're choosing to hire, who you hire, and who you choose to work with, right? Ultimately, when choosing an agent, there's a couple of factors to consider, okay? And typically, sellers will make a decision based on the agent who has the most aggressive marketing plan of action, and 2, the agent who has the best negotiating skills, who most strongly negotiates, right? Now, there's other questions and other things to consider. A lot of people will consider what brokerage does the agent work for. I would say more importantly, and it matters to me what brokerage that I work with, but I choose that brokerage specifically to offer advantages to my clients. Now, when you're looking to figure out what agent to work with and what agent to choose, it may matter what brokerage they're with. Does that brokerage actually offer you any advantages, or is it just the name behind the guy or gal that you like working with? How do these agents compare with other agents, right? So how does one agent compare to another? There's a lot of statistics you can ask, there's a lot of questions you can find out about their experience and their history, but how do they stack up ultimately? So here's an additional set of questions that you might want to consider when you're interviewing the agent. And this is how you're going to know whether you've got the right agent or team or not. Okay, so you're going to ask them if they've got a customized strategic marketing plan specifically for your home, okay? When they're discussing their marketing plan, listen to find out if their plan is proven, and does it specifically, is it designed to drive multiple offers, okay? The whole point of marketing, as we talked about before, is to drive interest and ultimately get you the right offer, the best offer. But it should be directed at driving multiple offers so that you have multiple options to choose from, okay? You want to ask whether or not they are certified negotiation experts. That's an actual designation that an agent can earn. Less than 2% of all realtors across the United States have ever bothered to earn that designation. That's days and days worth of classes that they would have had to take, all about negotiation, right? And so would that be important? I would imagine it is. Again, that's one of the things that people use to one of the criteria that people use to choose whether or not they're going to work with a certain agent. So how well do they negotiate? Okay, and that's one of the designations you can find out if they have that. That's certainly going to be an indicator that they've put time and energy into negotiating the best opportunity or the best offers for you. Okay, you're going to want to ask the agent how they handle appraisals. Okay. Each market is different. In a hot market, you're going to want to know how they handle appraisals. How are they going to ensure that you're going to end up with the amount of money that the contract says? In this market, we have appraisals that are often falling short of the list price, or sorry, not the list price, but the contract price, okay? But you've accepted an offer that is, let's say it's $800,000. It appraises at $720,000. How are they going to make up the difference? What is your agent doing proactively to make sure that the appraiser knows all that went into your home, all the offers that they got, the interest levels that we're seeing. Do they know what the market conditions are? They should, but do they? Do they know how many features and benefits that you've put into your home, how much money you've spent on it, making it what it is? And that's why it garnered that $800,000 instead of the $720,000. So you want to make sure that your agent is meeting with the appraisers and being proactive about the communication with the appraisers that are involved in your transaction. Okay, and really, ultimately, if the agents that you interview are not doing these other items, it's probably going to be very challenging for them to net you the highest amount of money at closing. Okay. Now, let's go on to the next point. The fourth mistake that sellers most commonly make when they're selling their home is not understanding market indicators. And that's why we address that through education. We believe that education leads to success in a real estate transaction. So we believe very strongly in educating our clients throughout the process, helping them understand those market indicators. What are the statistics involved? How fast are things selling? What price are people getting? How many new listings might there be on the market? How quickly are they going under contract? All these things are important. Then what about the process involved, right? So what about the marketing process and the pre-listing process? What about the process once you're under contract? There's so many aspects of a real estate sale. We want to make sure that our clients are well educated on the process, and that is ultimately going to lead to their success. All right, the fifth and final most common mistake that sellers tend to make is underestimating the process. We've told you all that there is involved. There's 180 steps involved in selling a home, but really it comes down to communication. The number one complaint against our industry is actually the lack of communication. People hate it that their agents aren't telling them what's going on, right? We're going to do that in part through the education process, but we're also going to set defined and clear expectations at the beginning. We're also going to then communicate with you frequently and, most importantly, honestly. No matter what's going on in the market, we're going to communicate that to you. We're going to advise you. Our role as consultants is to communicate, communicate, communicate. Ultimately, when you follow these 5 steps, you will be able to get your home sold, and that's our process. Look forward to working with you.